Good evening. It is time for today's Tax Talk. I'm your host. I'm attorney Stephen Leahy. It is Thursday, February 10th, the year of our Lord 2022. Happy birthday to my niece, Jessica. What we're finding out, the IRS had put out a publication today reminding us about tips and other things. And what I wanted to remind everybody is everything is taxable. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Won't you join us? So we will begin. Again, the IRS came out with a publication today that reminded us all about what's taxable, what's not. They always want to remind us. Actually, and as our thumbnail says, everything is taxable. And where does this come from? So let's talk about that first, because I bring this up a lot, and I'm a constitutionalist myself. And so I always like to talk about that. So let's talk about that a little bit. This is from the 16th Amendment to the United States Constitution. And here it is. It says, let's blow it up a little bit. Maybe you can see a little bit better. Okay, Amendment 16 says, the Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived, without apportionment among the several states and without regard to any census or enumeration. This was to overcome the provisions of the Constitution that they wanted to tax each state equally, and so in order to tax income, it wouldn't be equal among the states, and so they needed a constitutional amendment, and that's what the 16th Amendment does. But the important part there is all income is taxable from whatever source derived. Now, again, I think that everybody should pay all their taxes, and you should always report every dollar that you get in, as I do. I just do. I am a tax attorney, and I know, it's not worth, first, if you're to tell the truth, always tell the truth. And if you're lying on your tax return, well, you're not telling the truth. And so you should always tell the truth. And that means reporting all your income. Now, sometimes people don't report things. I always like to use the example of a lemonade stand. Kids have a lemonade stand. They're probably violating some health code. They're probably violating the IRS code. But we let that happen. That's not a bad thing. Sometimes laws can be stifling if we go to the letter of the law for every situation, right? Should you get a ticket for going 56 miles an hour over the limit? 56 miles in a 55 limit? Probably not. Is it a violation? Yeah, it's a violation. But you probably shouldn't get a ticket for going 56 in a 55. Okay, and where that line draws, some different municipalities draw that line in different places, but it shouldn't be at 56. We talk about that in Chicago, that they recently went to 6 miles over on the red light or on the speed limit cameras, and I think it's ridiculous. My own opinion. That doesn't mean I think people should speed. People shouldn't speed. So the same thing with taxes. Just because I think that they shouldn't, go down to every dime doesn't mean I think people should not pay their taxes. You should pay your taxes. As I mentioned, you have to be honest. Pay your taxes. It's on all of us, and I'm all for that. Pay your taxes. Okay. So having said that, the IRS has come up with the list. Today you'll see here is Irs Tip 2002, number 23. For those working in the service industry, tips are often a vital part of their income. who knows that better than those that work in the service industry? Like most forms of income, tips are taxable. Therefore, it's also vital that people understand the tax obligations that come with tip income. Here's some information to help taxpayers report tip income so they don't receive a surprise tax bill. Taxpayers must include all tips they receive in their gross income. This includes tips directly from customers, tips added using credit, debit, or gift cards, tips from a tip splitting arrangement with other employees. The value of non-cash tips, such as tickets, passes, or other items of value, is also income and subject to tax. 3 things can help taxpayers to correctly report their tip income. Keep a daily record, a tip record. Report tips to their employer. If you report tips to your employer will report it to the IRS, and then they will deduct it from your pay and the W-2, right? Generally, that's what will happen. Report all tips on their income tax return. And again, I'm all for it. Everybody should, every dollar, you should report it. But I just thought it was interesting that they have to tell that the IRS is trying to report or inform service employees about tips. They all know about the tips. They don't need the IRS to tell them that it's taxable. They all know it's taxable. And then this is earlier this year, or it actually was at the end of last year, the IRS put out another publication about this year's tax return. It is publication 17, and is about this year's tax returns, and it's really instructions on how to fill out your income. And in that section, we reviewed this before, but I thought it was interesting. Well, also, remember Tom Brady hit his 600th touchdown pass, and a gentleman got that ball and gave it back to Tom Brady, and he was bestowed many gifts. He may not have realized that all of those gifts he received are taxable. And so it ain't free. You ain't getting something for nothing. You're paying tax on all of that. They give you you give the ball back and they give you season tickets. The retail value of those season tickets is taxable. All of that's all taxable. But here's a list, and I'm not going to go through all of the list because it's alimony included in your tax return. I talked about that on John Hansen today. Here's a good. Bribes are taxable. If you receive a bribe, included in your tax return. Carpools don't include in your income amounts you receive from passengers for driving a car in a carpool to and from work. These amounts are considered reimbursement for your expenses. However, this rule doesn't apply if you have developed carpool arrangements into a profit-making business or transporting workers for hire. Cash rebates. For example, if you buy a new car for $24,000 cash and you receive a $2,000 rebate check from the manufacturer, the $2,000 isn't income to you. Your basis in the car is $22,000. Okay, so child support payments. You shouldn't report these payments on your tax return. Okay, so these are all things that are not taxable, except for the bribes, right? That they are taxable. So we go through there. There's a list of them. We talked about, there's some very interesting ones. Losses of estates and trusts generally aren't deductible by the beneficiary. Fees for services, we all know those are taxable. So there's a whole list. That the ones that I really wanted to get to was, and I talked about before, is stolen property. Stolen property is taxable. Illegal activities, all legal activities. If you sell drugs, it's taxable, right? To transport. If you steal property, you must report its fair market value in your income in the year you steal it, unless you return it to the rightful owner in the same year. If you don't return it if you return it the year after, it's taxable. So there's a lot of good. Let's see if we can find a couple others. We're in the S's, but there's some tips. Let's see if we can find a tax tip here. I just think it's interesting. If you win a prize in a lucky number drawing, television or radio quiz program, beauty contest, or other event, you must include it in your income. For example, if you win a $50 prize in a photography contest, you must report this income on Schedule 1, Line 8H. If you refuse to accept the prize, don't include its value in your income. See what else is out there. There's others here. If you collect stamps, here's a good one. If you collect stamps, coins, or other items as a hobby for now I just read this about the Venmo that a lot of collectors may sell an item for Venmo and get paid Venmo. Well, here it is. If you collect stamps, coins, or other items as a hobby for recreation and pleasure, and you sell any of these items, your gain is taxable as a taxable gain, not income. However, if you sell items from your collection at a loss, you can't deduct the loss. So, because it's a hobby loss. Gifts and inheritance. If you win a state lottery prize payable installments, it's taxable. Lotteries and raffles. Winning from lotteries and raffles are gambling winnings. Here's gambling winnings. You must include your gambling winnings in income in Schedule 1, Line 8B. Winnings from fantasy sports leagues are gambling winnings. If you itemize your deductions on Schedule A, you can deduct gambling losses you have during the year, but only up until the amount of your winnings. If you're in a trade or business of gambling, then that's in Schedule C. So this is another question that came up, because a lot of people who are in these fantasy leagues, they pay the winner through Venmo. And then people will say, am I going to get a 1099K? And the answer is yes. Now, I know people are saying, well, no, you won't, because you'll just say it's a personal, it's a family and friend. It's not a service or good. And so that's all I have to do, and I'll avoid it. I don't think that's the case. I think anytime you go over $600, you're going to get a 1099K. And if I'm in a fantasy league and they pay me with a Venmo, it's going to be reported and I'm going to pay taxes on it. That's just the way it works. Now, as I mentioned, it was taxable anyway. Now, some people might not pay taxes on that because they don't know that it's taxable. Okay, I don't think they're trying to cheat anybody. They just didn't think about it being taxable. As if I got the ball from Tom Brady and I gave it back to him. That ball, some said, was worth $600,000, but yet I gave it back to him. What's the ball worth? I mean, retail value of the ball. But then they say, hey, thank you so much. Here's a gift. Here's season tickets. I wouldn't think that that's taxable, but in fact, it is taxable. So everything is taxable according to the 16th Amendment. And it's something that we have to all keep in mind. And the IRS is trying to remind us. As I mentioned today in this publication that they put out, they're trying to tell us about these tips. Is that going to save our economy if people don't report their tips? I mean, do report the tips that they're probably not. Doesn't mean you shouldn't report your tips. You should report your tips. But, it's sometimes we have to worry about at what cost. We can get every dollar that the IRS has coming, close the tax gap to zero. But we have to ask ourselves, at what cost? We can stop crime and make it zero crime. At what cost? And it would be the cost of our freedom. And I'm a big freedom lover. Liberty. That's me. Liberty lover. Okay. So anyway, that's where we are today. So thanks so much for joining us. I wanted to remind everybody that we need your help, right? We need your help to get the word out. So we're going to ask you to like and subscribe. Let me see if I can. I guess I didn't change it. Like and subscribe. All right. Who else gives you tax news every day? And it's the core of all news, tax news. And that's what we do here. So we ask you to help us get the word out. Tell your friends and families, like and share. Thank you so much. Remember now, if you're fighting the IRS, fight them. What's the first thing you do? If you've heard the show, you know what the first thing is. You get a copy of my book, Deal with Your IRS Problem Today. Go to freeirsbook.com. Free, irsbook.com. Get yourself a copy of my book. And thanks so much for joining us. Tomorrow is Friday. We do the Trust Radio Network tomorrow about 2:15 in the afternoon. We'll be live for about 2 hours. So join us tomorrow on all the venues that you find us here today. And we thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Tomorrow, Monday. Thanks so much.